Well, what's this guy going on about epiphytes in Easter Ross? I mean, we're on the East Coast. There's not much rain, only half as much rain in Tain as in Ullapool. But they are there. But I don't pretend they're common, but they are of interest. So vascular epiphytes are plants that grow on other plants. They grow on other plants for support and not parasitically, excluding climbers. It's a difficult place up there on another plant. You know, you're right up in the air, you're exposed to climate, you're exposed to frost and pollution. And you can fall off, of course, a dangerous place, mainly in the tropics. The tropics and neotropics, particularly Central America and Northern South America, have got 10% of our vascular plant species, particularly orchids. I say Oncidium for that, I may be wrong, but Tillandsia on the other side. They're very beautiful, some of these plants. The trouble is you've got to wait for them to get blown off the top of the forest to see them down at the bottom, but otherwise it's absolutely great. But here, Easter Ross, East Scotland, we do have epiphytes, mainly like elsewhere in Scotland, they're the bryophytes, the lichens, which of course are so important in Scotland. But vascular plants may be epiphytic. I mean, mainly our dear old friend Polypody, mainly Polypodium vulgare, almost entirely in Easter Ross, but also others. Wood sorrel, buckler ferns, particularly Dilatata, and great wood rush. Other species may be occasionally epiphytic, but not particularly well adapted. On the left there, that's Polypodium, very near the sea, only half a mile from the east coast. Look at all the moss on that tree. So it must be locally damp, that place. And the other one is Oxalis in flower on a tree in Glencalvie with a bit of Polypody lurking. So over a period, 5-year period, when just out general recording, I wasn't doing this specifically, I just noted epiphytes I saw in Easter Ross during general recording, at least half a meter above the ground, you know, around the bottom of the tree, so there's an epiphyte. So I left those, and I left things on logs because, you know, you never quite know whether it's an epiphyte or not. Not surprisingly, Polypody was the top of the pops, 54. But Oxalis, wood sorrel, came up 31 times, you know, that quite a lot really. And Bryopteris, particularly Dilatata, came up a lot. And so did the great wood rush, which mainly in rather damp riversides, actually. So rather surprisingly, I found Vaccinium myrtillus blaeberry or bilberry came up, just got out onto the hip parade. And then lots of other ones, the accidental epiphytes, lots and lots of them, and there are many, many more, but these are just the ones I fell over on my travels. So quite a lot of trees in there, as you notice. Most often on broad-leaved, mainly Quercus oak, but also alder, Babetula birch, Sorbus, rowan, and willows. Not much on beech, actually. Sometimes pine, actually. You don't expect that so much. But they do, particularly Dryopteris dilatata, broad buckler fern on pine. On the left there, the picture is of Dryopteris and pine, and Hill of Tain, again, half a mile from the sea. Not much moss on that tree, you may notice. And the other one are some of the unusual ones. Our dear old friend Sitka spruce growing as an epiphyte. Gets everywhere, doesn't it, Sitka spruce? We'll be hearing more about that in one of the workshops. And common wintergreen, what's that doing on a tree? You know, it's not in flower there, I'm afraid, but it's there. I've yet to see an orchid in Scotland growing. I bet somebody has, you know. Somebody sent me a picture of a Goodyear repens creeping ladies tresses growing on a garage roof in Forres, you know, so these orchids can get anywhere. So I'll find it someday, I'm sure, an orchid on a tree. So I monitored 15 trees with epiphytes, at least a meter above the ground, in 7 wood low locations, twice a year for 10 years. And 13 polypodies, 3 oxalis, wood sorrel, and 1 each, Sitka, rowan, and broad buckler. Majority of the sites face north, and the main bryophyte and lichen cover was 85%. Majority were bryophytes, 2/3. And the angle, 8 of them were up straight, you know, hanging on. It's quite a business hanging on to a vertical site, but its polypody was particularly good at that, I must say. 9 at various angles and 1 quite flat. And then 10 years later, the polypody was present every year in every site, still present this year when I went round again. And it was in exactly the same location on the tree 11 of the times. I can't guarantee they were the same plants. You know, they didn't answer, yes, sir, I'm polypody number 26. They couldn't do that. 2 others were still on the tree, but probably not in the same location. Poor old oxalis didn't quite make it. 2 got to 8 years, but they didn't. But the one actually, there was just a 2-year gap, and I bet it was still there lurking in the moss and hiding from me. And the others didn't quite make it. They actually, one of them nearly did. So, comparison with other vertical sites. Rural walls, also sort of straight up, but generally unmortared. Polypody likes these in Easter Ross and can grow densely. So I looked at 5 rural walls over 5 years, and all the polypody populations persisted. So it likes that site. And then I did an urban wall comparison. Now, this is part of my exhibit, so just a brief summary. But I did 10 3-meter sites annually over 10 years in Easter Ross again. And it's a different story on urban walls, another vertical site. Most plants did not persist in the same place. And different plants, you know, here we are on urban walls, maidenhair spleenwort, Asplenium rutimeraria, wall rue, ivy-leaved toadflax, which loves our walls. I know it's come in from overseas originally, but I like ivy-leaved toadflax. It's added to our flora. And buckler fern, sometimes, both species of buckler, both common ones. 21 other species. And again, lots of other plants do urban walls. Quite a lot of neophytes, actually. But only this survey, only 8% of the plants were in the same location after 10 years. And that's ivy-leaved toadflax on a wall in Edmonton, where it's enjoying its life. So, vascular epiphytes are present in some Easter Ross woodlands. It's very patchy. It's mainly the old woods, particularly oak woods. And the frequency varies enormously between different sites. So again, it's not far from universal, but they're there. Polypody is the most frequent and seems well adapted to this epiphytic life. Whether it's in the top category of epiphyte, which means 95% of the plants, I don't think it is. But deciduous trees and rural walls are important habitats for this plant, although it does grow elsewhere on banks and rocks. But it's of interest, the other plants that make it frequently, wood sorrel, Dryopteris dilatata, and the great wood rush. I mean, why? There's a lot of other plants down on the floor there, but a lot of them don't make it in the same frequent way. The difference between these species and polypody is a polypody is often hardly present on the floor at all, whereas these other ones are usually present. There's a lot of oxalis on the ground around oxalis epiphytes. The plant populations of town walls are very different, and they seem to have a shorter lifespan. So it's a different habitat. So, but the one vertical site I haven't done, a rock faces, maybe that's next year. So worth looking out for vascular epiphytes. I mean, you know, in different areas, it's different. Looking around the Dundee area, it's Dryopteris dilatata that comes top, you know. And I own a small woodland in North Fife that's got lots of oxalis and Dryopteris in, and they're not getting into the trees. I think, get up on that tree, you lazy thing, but they won't do it. But I've got Geranium robertianum on the tree there. So thank you for listening, but look out for vascular epiphytes. They're there, even in places that are a long way from the Celtic rainforest. So they're there, you know. Thank you very much.